My dear brothers and sisters, there are times in life when the soil that once grew you begins to poison your roots. The same walls that sheltered you start closing in, and the voices that once lifted you now echo with judgment, doubt, and pain. Healing, my friends, does not bloom in the darkness that shattered you. You cannot restore your light while standing in the very shadow that dimmed it. You see, healing is not just about mending the wound. It is about understanding the soil in which that wound was planted. If the place that broke you still feeds on your silence, still feeds on your fear, then how can your spirit breathe? Sometimes you must choose to walk away, not because you are weak, but because you are wise enough to know that love should not hurt and peace should not cost your soul. When the world teaches you to stay, to endure, to bear the pain until it becomes normal, you must remind yourself that endurance and healing are not the same. Endurance keeps you surviving, healing helps you live again. The same hands that bruised your heart cannot be the ones to soothe it. The same circle that mocked your dreams cannot be the one to celebrate your rebirth. You must step outside the storm if you wish to see the rainbow. Change is frightening, yes, but it is also freeing. Sometimes God removes you from a place not to punish you, but to protect you. He whispers, "You've learned all you can hear. Now go and let your soul stretch toward new light." Healing often requires solitude, a sacred distance from what broke you. You may have to leave behind people you once loved, dreams you once chased, or memories you once cherished. But remember, release is not betrayal. It is reverence for your own becoming. In the quiet of new beginnings, your spirit starts to hum again. You rediscover your laughter, your strength, and your purpose. You learn that healing is not found by returning to what hurt you, but by walking courageously into what waits for you beyond the pain. The heart, when given space, remembers how to beat freely again. The soul, when freed from toxic roots, grows wings. You cannot heal in the same place that broke you, for healing is not about returning. It is about rising. It is about honoring the lesson, but refusing to relive the wound. And so, when your spirit calls you to move, listen. When peace whispers your name, follow. When your heart says, "This is not where I belong," believe it. For the first step away from what broke you is the first step toward becoming whole again. My dear brothers and sisters, there are moments in this life when the very ground beneath your feet begins to shift, when the home you once called safe starts to feel like a cage, and the voices that once lifted you begin to pierce your peace. You can no longer breathe in the same air that carries the scent of your sorrow. Healing, my friends, is a sacred process, and it cannot take place in the same environment that caused your soul to fracture. The place that witnessed your breaking cannot be the same soil that nurtures your rebirth. To heal is to seek new ground, to move toward the light even when the darkness calls your name. There are some rooms that hold too many echoes of your pain, some people who remind you of the person you used to be before you learned how to stand again. Staying where you were broken is like watering a plant in poisoned soil. No matter how much sunlight you pour, it cannot bloom because the roots are still surrounded by what once harmed them. Healing requires change, and change requires courage. You must be brave enough to walk away, to say, "This is no longer where I grow," and mean it with every breath of your being. Sometimes the people around you will not understand your need to leave. They will call it selfishness, they will call it running away, but you must remember that survival is not selfish. You owe yourself the same love and protection that you have so freely given to others. You cannot teach yourself to breathe while drowning in the same waters that pulled you under. Healing begins when you reach the shore, not while you're still fighting the tide. It is not a sign of weakness to choose peace over pain. It takes strength to rise from the ruins and say, "I deserve better." The world often confuses endurance with healing, but endurance keeps you in the same place, and healing asks you to move. Endurance is surviving the fire, healing is walking out of the ashes. You cannot keep touching the wound and expect it to close. You must step away, give it air, give it time, and give yourself permission to rest. There will be moments when the memory of that place calls you back, whispering that it will be different this time. But you must remember that familiarity does not equal safety. The comfort of the known can be a dangerous illusion. Growth is not meant to be comfortable. It is meant to be transformative. You must let go of what broke you so you can embrace what builds you. And when you finally walk away, when you choose to love yourself enough to start anew, you will find that your spirit begins to heal in silence, in sunlight, and in spaces filled with hope. The heart remembers how to beat freely again, and the soul learns once more how to sing. You see, healing is not just about mending what has been torn. It is about understanding the soil in which that pain first took root. If you stay in the same place that wounded you, your spirit will continue to absorb the echoes of that hurt, and no amount of pretending can silence that energy. Healing demands a new atmosphere, one where peace is possible and where your heart is not constantly reminded of the ache that once consumed it. The space that once drained your light cannot suddenly become the ground where your spirit flourishes. Sometimes, you must walk away from the very things you love because they no longer serve your becoming. There are people who will tell you to forgive and stay, to let time do the healing. But time alone does not heal, environment does. You cannot place a broken bone in the same pressure and expect it to realign. Likewise, you cannot place a broken heart in the same toxic rhythm and expect it to find harmony. Healing needs silence from chaos, distance from destruction, and the kind of love that does not demand your pain in exchange for its presence. You deserve a peace that does not require explanation. Walking away does not mean you hate the people who hurt you. It means you love yourself enough to protect your spirit. It is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of reverence. When the place that once felt like home begins to feel like a battlefield, you must have the courage to lay down your armor and step away. For there is no victory in surviving a war that never ends. Healing begins when you finally stop fighting for what continuously bleeds you. There is a beauty in departure that few understand. When you walk away from pain, you walk toward clarity. You begin to see that not every person deserves a seat at your table. Not every memory deserves a home in your mind, and not every environment deserves the privilege of your energy. The soul thrives in spaces that honor its growth, not in those that feed on its weakness. Sometimes you must leave the familiar behind to discover who you are without the weight of survival pressing on your chest. Healing requires honesty, and honesty often whispers truths that are hard to hear. It tells you that staying where you were broken will not make you whole. It tells you that you cannot rebuild your wings while standing in the same fire that burned them. You must rise and seek air that does not carry the scent of your past sorrow. Only then will you find that healing is not a return, it is a resurrection. It is the act of choosing yourself again and again until your reflection no longer carries the shadow of the pain that once held you captive. When the world teaches you to stay, to endure, to bear the pain until it becomes normal, you must remind yourself that endurance and healing are not the same. Endurance is the art of surviving storms while standing still, but healing is the sacred act of walking away from them when they have served their purpose. Endurance teaches you strength, but healing teaches you freedom. Many of us are raised to believe that to love is to suffer, that to care is to tolerate, and that leaving is a sign of weakness. Yet, my dear one, it takes more courage to walk away from what hurts than to stay in the name of loyalty. The same hands that bruised your heart cannot be the ones to soothe it. The same environment that silenced your truth cannot be the one that helps you rediscover your voice. You cannot bloom in a garden where the gardener refuses to water you. Healing asks that you plant yourself in new soil, where sunlight and nourishment are not privileges but promises. There is a difference between comfort and confinement. One nurtures your growth, the other chains your potential. Sometimes the love you thought you needed is the very thing that holds your spirit hostage. When you choose to leave the place that broke you, you are not betraying anyone. You are saving yourself. You are saying, I am worthy of a peace that does not come at the cost of my soul. Healing begins the moment you decide you no longer owe anyone your suffering. You no longer need to prove your strength by enduring pain. You can prove your strength by creating boundaries, by saying no, by choosing joy over judgment and peace over chaos. The heart cannot heal where it is constantly reminded of its wounds. Each time you revisit the same hurt, you tear open the scar before it can close. You must give yourself permission to distance yourself from the noise, from the chaos, from the people who speak in half-truths and hollow promises. You deserve to live in a space where your laughter echoes louder than your tears. Healing is not about forgetting. It is about transforming the pain into wisdom, the suffering into strength, and the heartbreak into growth. So do not let anyone convince you that staying in pain is noble. There is no glory in self-destruction. There is no reward in repeating the same cycle of hurt. The universe calls you to rise, to move, to grow beyond the boundaries of what tried to contain you. The moment you listen to that call, your healing begins. Not in the arms of what broke you, but in the freedom of what awaits you. And when you finally step into that freedom, you will understand that healing was never about going back. It was always about moving forward. See, change is frightening, yes, but it is also the only doorway to freedom. Many people resist change because they fear the unknown more than they fear the pain they already know. They stay in the familiar ache because it feels safer than stepping into uncertainty. But if the space you occupy no longer feeds your soul, you must gather the courage to walk into the wilderness of possibility. Sometimes God removes you from a place not to punish you, but to protect you. The walls that once surrounded you may now be too small for the person you are becoming. Growth demands expansion, and sometimes expansion means breaking away from what once made you feel secure. There is divine wisdom in being uprooted. When life begins to shake the ground beneath your feet, it is not always chaos, it can be a call. A call to rise higher, to breathe deeper, to see clearer. God whispers to your spirit, "You have learned all you can hear. It is time to go where your heart can grow again." Those words may come softly, through intuition or dreams, or they may come through the loud disruption of heartbreak, loss, or betrayal. Either way, the message remains the same: you cannot heal in the same place that broke you. Healing often requires solitude, a sacred distance from the noise that once kept you small. In the quiet, you begin to hear yourself again. You learn to trust your own thoughts without the distortion of others' expectations. You start to recognize what peace truly feels like and how precious it is. Sometimes that peace means leaving behind what you once thought was permanent. It may mean stepping away from people you love, from places you grew comfortable in, or from dreams you built in survival. But remember, release is not betrayal. It is an act of deep respect for your spirit. You are not abandoning anyone by choosing yourself. You are honoring the life you were given. The process of leaving what broke you is not without pain. You will question your decision, you will doubt your strength, and there will be days when you long for the comfort of what you left behind. But healing is not about comfort. It is about truth. The truth that your soul deserves better, that your voice deserves to be heard, and that your light deserves to shine without being dimmed. Every step you take away from pain, no matter how small, is an act of faith. And as you move forward, you begin to see the grace in the transition. You realize that what you thought was an ending was only a beginning in disguise. The distance you created from what broke you becomes the very space where your spirit starts to bloom again. In that stillness, you remember who you are, and you begin to rise. In the quiet of new beginnings, something miraculous happens within you. The noise of the past begins to fade, and your soul starts to hum a softer, more peaceful tune. You rediscover pieces of yourself that were buried beneath years of pain, confusion, and compromise. You begin to see that healing is not a single moment of triumph, but a slow unfolding, a gentle return to yourself. It is the realization that you no longer need to rush, no longer need to prove, no longer need to shrink to fit into the space that once suffocated you. Healing is not loud. It does not always come with applause. Sometimes it's as simple as waking up one morning and realizing that the H that once controlled your every thought has softened into memory. When you step away from the place that broke you, you create room for new light to enter. That space, once filled with sorrow, becomes a garden of possibility. You start to laugh again, not because everything is perfect, but because you've learned that joy can exist even in imperfection. You start to trust yourself again, listening to your intuition like an old friend you finally learned to hear. The past will still whisper sometimes, trying to pull you back into its gravity, but you'll find that its voice grows weaker with every breath of peace you take. Healing teaches you patience. It teaches you to honor your pace. There will be days when the pain resurfaces, and that is all right. Wounds do not vanish overnight, they fade in layers. The heart, when given the chance, repairs itself not by forgetting, but by transforming. Every scar becomes a reminder of what you survived, not what destroyed you. Every step forward becomes a testament to your courage. You learn that healing is not a straight path. It bends, it circles, it pauses, but every turn carries you closer to wholeness. You begin to notice the beauty in things you once overlooked. The way sunlight filters through your window, the way silence feels like safety instead of loneliness, the way your breath feels steady and alive. You begin to realize that peace is not something to chase, it's something to create. And in this creation, you start to rebuild a life that reflects who you are now, not who you were when you were broken. The people who come into your life after your healing will meet a stronger, wiser version of you. They will meet the one who knows her worth, who understands her boundaries, and who refuses to trade peace for acceptance. You will see how far you've come and understand that walking away was not the end. It was the beginning of everything. Healing, you discover, is not found by returning to what hurt you, but by walking courageously into what was always meant for you beyond the pain. You cannot heal in the same place that broke you, for healing is not about returning. It is about rising. To rise is to honor the pain that once silenced you, but refuse to let it define you. It is to look at the ashes of your past and see not the end, but the beginning of your transformation. Healing is the quiet rebellion of the soul, the decision to create beauty where there was once only brokenness. It is the choice to rebuild yourself with grace, to step into a new chapter without carrying the weight of the old one. You cannot climb toward light if your feet remain buried in the ruins of yesterday. To heal is to understand that some doors must remain closed. There are memories that serve as teachers but not as destinations. You may look back and acknowledge them, but you must not stay there. The place that hurt you cannot be the same space that teaches you peace. Growth demands separation from what once limited you. Healing is not about pretending the pain never happened. It's about using that pain as the soil from which strength blooms. You rise by accepting the lesson, not by reliving the wound. When your spirit calls you to move, it is not a whisper of abandonment, it is a call toward freedom. You may feel guilt for leaving, guilt for choosing yourself, guilt for saying no more. But remember, guilt is the ghost of your old self trying to keep you small. You owe no loyalty to your suffering. You owe loyalty only to your healing. It takes courage to walk away from what once felt like home, but that courage becomes your compass. Every step you take toward peace is a declaration that you are no longer a prisoner of your past. And though the journey may feel lonely, it is in that loneliness that your soul begins to rebuild its foundation. You start to see that solitude is not emptiness. It is sacred space. It is the place where you meet yourself again without the noise of the world, without the demands of others. You begin to feel the quiet power of your own heartbeat and realize that everything you once sought in others, validation, love, acceptance, has always lived within you. Healing is an awakening. It is the moment you understand that closure does not always come from apology, and peace does not always come from understanding. Sometimes healing is choosing to stop asking why and start saying, thank you. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you for the strength. Thank you for the chance to begin again. For the first step away from what broke you is the first step toward becoming whole again. Healing begins in that single act of courage when you decide to no longer live beneath the weight of your pain. It is not a grand gesture. Sometimes it is as simple as choosing to breathe, to get up, to take one small step forward even when your heart trembles. Healing does not happen in a rush. It unfolds slowly, like dawn breaking through the night. Each day brings a new light, each moment a chance to build yourself back from the fragments of what was lost. And though the journey may seem endless, every movement toward peace is progress, no matter how small it feels. There will be times when your past tries to call you back, when memories whisper that you were safer in the familiar hurt. The heart can be a stubborn keeper of pain because pain once felt like home. But do not mistake the comfort of familiarity for love. Pain is persistent, yes, but peace is patient. It waits for you to stop running in circles and choose the path that leads forward. Healing requires your participation. It asks you to let go, to forgive, to release your grip on what you cannot change. You cannot pour new life into old wounds. You must give yourself permission to move beyond the H and trust that the unknown will hold you better than the pain ever did. As you continue, you will notice the shift. The air will feel lighter. The noise in your mind will soften. You will begin to see beauty where before there was only sorrow. Healing does not erase what happened. It transforms it. It turns scars into stories of strength, heartbreak into a deeper understanding of love, and endings into sacred beginnings. You start to recognize that every loss was a redirection, every heartbreak a lesson in self-worth, and every goodbye a step toward freedom. You will learn to carry your past differently, not as a burden, but as wisdom. You will no longer see yourself as broken, but as becoming. You will realize that healing was never about forgetting what hurt you. It was about remembering who you are without the hurt. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become after it. The person who rises from pain is not the same as the one who fell into it. You have been refined by fire, strengthened by struggle, and softened by grace. So when you look back, do not see your scars as signs of weakness. See them as the map of your resurrection, proof that you were brave enough to walk away, wise enough to rest, and strong enough to heal. Each step you take away from what broke you is a step into your becoming, the beautiful, unshakable, whole version of you that was always waiting beneath the pain. And when the journey of healing has carried you far from the ruins of what once was, you will look back and see that nothing was truly lost, only transformed. The pain that once silenced you became the poetry of your strength. The endings you feared became the gateways to your freedom. You will understand that walking away was never an act of weakness, but an act of profound self-love. You did not run from the past, you rose above it. And in that rising, you became the living proof that the human spirit, no matter how deeply wounded, can bloom again, brighter, wiser, and more whole than ever before.